All right, clothing and fashion. Now listen, the textbook goes into this in much more depth. But I want to just sort of tie fashion in to the rest of the lecture by talking about the important items. And the most important item was this, the shenty. The shenty was a white sort of skirt, a piece of fabric that every single man in ancient Egypt wore. And you could wear it in a variety of styles and lengths. Sometimes you could pull it up between your legs to protect your private parts. But a shenty was the mainstay of Egyptian male clothing. Here is a shenty that's been brought up between the legs to protect the family jewels. Everyone wore shenties, from farmers in the fields to slaves to pharaohs. And you'll notice that his shenty, I'm sorry this image is a little bit blurred, but I couldn't find one that was less blurred. You'll see that it sticks out at the front. Important people had starched shenties. They were starched so that they would stick out like this at the front. And what do you think that symbolized? I think you know. It symbolized an erection. A large penis with an erection. This, of course, goes back to one of the continuums of fashion, sex, and false advertising often. So the starched shenty was supposed to represent a large, erect, fertile penis. Women were often very scantily clad. It had nothing to do with sex. The naked body simply wasn't taboo in ancient Egypt. But an Egyptian woman would sometimes, to protect her skin, but also for fashion, wear this beautiful pleated dress, which was quite diaphanous, called a callus. And look at this image. I always think it looks like Cher in the 70s. And here is an illustration showing the variety of ways that you could drape a callus. Men sometimes wore it too. And of course, these beautiful beaded dresses. Now, a couple thousand years separates these two dresses, but you can see they are almost identical. Little change in detail, fashion fads, but fashion changes when the world changes. Fashion only changes when it needs to. And these beautiful beaded dresses, which were probably worn over a naked body, were worn, you know, by those who could afford it. This is a lot of beadwork here. But it gives you an idea of, first of all, the idea that nudity was not at all taboo in ancient Egypt. These dresses serve no function other than fashion and status and style. They don't protect your skin, do they? It was about fashion. The Egyptians loved fashion, and they understood it. And here are two depictions from Egypt of women wearing these very dresses. Headdresses and crowns. You can't think about ancient Egypt without headdresses and crowns. There are so many of them. The textbook details more, but I'm going to give you the most famous. This one. You've seen this a million times, haven't you? It has a name, you know. It's called a nemes, and it was made of starched linen. Right? These I've had students who thought they were made of metal or gold because of Tutankhamun and his sarcophagus. No, these were made of starched linen, and they were striped. And guess what? We're not going to see stripes again for a very, very, very long time. When the nemes was tucked in underneath at the back, it was called a kat. And you've seen these lovely blue crowns, haven't you? This is called a capresh, and it is the blue crown of war, the blue war crown. So whenever you see this depicted, it's either showing a pharaoh or a military hero who's had a lot of victory in war. If it's part of a story on the wall of a tomb, for example, if you see one of these appearing, it's telling the story of some war. And this, Nefertiti's wearing one here. This is the flat crown. This came later from the New Kingdom. But boy, the Egyptians loved their bling. These wonderful collars, these jeweled and beaded collars that you see in so much Egyptian art, they have a name. It's called a yusek or a wesek, but most people say yusek. And here are two ladies wearing a yusek. They were made of beads and they sat on your shoulders. But my goodness, there is so much gold in ancient Egypt, pendants and necklaces. Look at this enamel work. Again, using those minerals that we looked at earlier, the very minerals from which color was derived. I love this. It's a gold necklace shaped like bees. Look at this ring. Look at this bracelet. They loved their bling. Often jewelry had a spiritual significance, but often it was jewelry for the very same reason we wear it now. Ooh, look at my new ring. I'm rich and I'm stylish. Of course, we all know that Egyptians wore makeup. They wore kohl around their eyes, and they used a lot of color. They would blend mineral with water or paste or sort of gum so that it would endure and stay on all day. This is a makeup kit from ancient Egypt. All of these little bottles and vessels for your different colors, your different kohls, and they were put on with brushes and sticks, like these ones. But what about hair? Oh, that wonderful Egyptian hair. Sorry, another shocker for you. Ancient Egyptians shaved their heads. They took all the hair off their bodies with a pumice stone and they shaved their heads, men and women. It was considered cleaner. There was a head lice problem in ancient Egypt, so it helped with the head lice problem, and it was just considered hygienic and clean in the way we shave our legs today. So what about all that hair? Guess what? Wigs. Egyptians wore wigs. The wigs were dressed often, including beads. The last one I showed you down here in the bottom right, this is an Egyptian wig, and this can be seen at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, I believe. But we find tons and tons and tons of wigs in tombs, and obviously hairdressers were employed to produce wigs and dress them. But you know what? If you were just sort of a regular Egyptian woman and you were going to the market, you would go out with your bald head, your shaved head. You didn't always wear wigs. Men and women did wear wigs, but you didn't always have to wear them. So I'm afraid that might be a bit of a shocker to some of you. Egyptians were bald. And I love this picture that I found of an elegant Egyptian lady putting on her eye makeup. And she's probably going to put on her wig in a second. But I think often it was okay to go out and about without your wig. Wigs, by the way, were made of either human hair or horsehair. Beards. All right. An important Egyptian sometimes grew a little sort of wispy beard on the end of his chin that he would dye red with henna and then braid gold thread through. However, most Egyptian beards that you see on pharaohs and important dignitaries were fake. They were made of copper or gold, and they were attached with a ribbon or a piece of leather that tied behind the head. We saw in Mesopotamia, didn't we, that beards signified wisdom. It was exactly the same in ancient Egypt, but each beard and each shape of beard and color of beard signified something specific, an event or a ceremony. So beards were fake, and I love this. On some statues, the beards were removable, so that you could change your statue up, if you like, kind of like a Mr. Potato Head toy. I think that's so cute, so weird. I love each.